Okay, I don't talk as loud as Matt from Worcester. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah!
Okay, great. Thank you very much for coming out, everybody. My name is Patrick Humphreys. I'm president of the Greater Boston Tea Party, and I know there's a lot of Jordan Page fans here. Actually, well, hold on. Actually, everybody here should be a Jordan Page fan. If you weren't before, you should be now because he's phenomenal. Let's give it up for Jordan Page. Come on!
Yeah!
Woo! I'm sure you got a website, jordanpage.com or something like that. jordanpagemusic.com. Check it out. Phenomenal. And he's got CDs here for sale today. Thank you. Great. Check it out. The gentleman right there with them. Okay. This is a tax day tea party. We've been holding these for roughly 5 years now, so since 2009. This is something we do every year. Thanks, Jordan. Do every year to kind of remind ourselves that we are the grassroots. We need to be out there. We need to be making a difference. We need to let people know that we're active. Problem is people expect to see us at rallies all the time because they think that's all we do, but that's not what all we do. We are the grassroots. We get out there, we get active, we make a difference. In this state, it's a lot tougher than in most states. There's been a lot of successes over the year. 2010, there was a huge turnaround. 2014, there was a huge turnaround. Of course, Massachusetts seems to be a little bit slower than most, as we can imagine. That's why I've met a few people here from New Hampshire. How many people are here from New Hampshire? Including one of our speakers. Yes, absolutely.
Live free or die!
Absolutely. Live free or die. Yeah. Well, Boston strong as well, yes. And we have Connecticut people as well? Absolutely phenomenal. Okay, well, we got a great lineup of speakers this afternoon. The first one is Dr. Peg Lutsik. She'll be talking on Common Core. She's a lady from Pennsylvania, and she's currently parking her car. It's been a little bit difficult parking. Has anybody ever had trouble parking in Massachusetts before, in Boston area? She's going to be talking on Common Core. That is one thing that has really energized a lot of people. You could have a meeting in a school auditorium, you get a couple hundred people out to look at it like they did in Medway a couple months ago, and last night down in Carver, Massachusetts, Dr. Lutsik and Jamie Gass and Dr. Sandra Sotsky, they were addressing a crowd of somewhere around 100 plus people. This is something that's getting the grassroots involved. What happens though is that we need to, as this is happening with every single topic that comes up, whether it be Common Core, Second Amendment issues, atrocities like the Justina Pelletier situation, those things are all happening. Sometimes those are tripping points for people. But as those tripping points happen for people, you need to keep on reminding people that if you're doing each one of those things individually, really the best way to address all this stuff is to try to get control of your government, be involved in your government, be the grassroots that's actually making a difference and getting the right people elected that really just want to leave us alone. I think we got a little sign down there saying, Washington, leave us alone. Actually, we'd like Beacon Hill to leave us alone as much as possible as well. We just want to be left alone. We just want to keep the stuff that we earn, and we don't want to have to be being told that we have to dole it out to other people. Okay, we also have Jessica Vaughn coming up. She'll be talking about immigration. Andrew Hemingway from the 603 Alliance, talking about electing conservatives. Rob Eno from Red Mask Group and Conservative Review will be talking about 2016 politics. Barbara from Harlem will be talking. And we'll also have Representative Jeff Deal, who fell out somewhat with the state party leadership because he did some phenomenal work on the Yes on One ballot question. And then we'll close with Matt O'Brien of the Worcester Tea Party, who does really speak loud. I don't know if he'll need this microphone, but we'll let him use it anyway. Okay, our first speaker has arrived. She is Dr. Peg Lutsik. She comes to us from Pennsylvania by way of Carver yesterday evening. We'll just have her come up and start talking to the group here.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming today in this lovely afternoon here in Boston. I understand you guys had a lot of snow. I want you to know where I live, we get over 100 inches a year, always. So you're welcome to my world for this particular year. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am a teacher from Pennsylvania with over 35 years experience in education. I've taught everything from preschool through college, and for a number of years I worked for the United States Department of Education, where my job was to review and evaluate education reform initiatives. So when Common Core came along, it was kind of right up my alley. What is Common Core? Common Core is where the government says that by the mandate of a bureaucrat, they can tell your children what they should learn, when they should learn it, and how they should learn it to the government standard. That's patently ridiculous. To show how, let's move that to healthcare. If we were going to make it a healthcare standard, the equivalent would be to say that by the age of 8, every child would have to be a certain height and a certain weight. Isn't that ridiculous? So how can the government mandate that every child learn on the same schedule? You cannot mandate achievement any more than you can mandate your height and your weight. The way that Common Core works, you have these government mandates, and then we have a test. And the government, it's a state assessment, and now they're national assessments. So Massachusetts has joined a consortium called PARC. The assessments are given and they're high stakes. The children have to pass the test, and the teachers are evaluated based on whether or not the children pass the test. But there's a problem with that, because you can't control what the children bring to the testing situation. Maybe the child is sick that day. Maybe their dog died last night. Maybe there was upheaval in their house, or they didn't get breakfast that morning. In any given large population of children, about 10% of the kids, you're not testing how well they do math. You're testing the fact that their dog died last night. But as the socioeconomic level of the child goes down, that extraneous factor percentage goes up. Because children who live in poverty are more likely to have had poor nutrition or not enough rest or an undiagnosed illness. These tests, ladies and gentlemen, are not just meaningless, they're discriminatory. These are not about measuring the achievement of our children. This is about sorting our children.
Yep.
And no government should be in the business of sorting kids, ever. Common Core is not something we're doing for our kids, it's something we're doing to them. Now, interestingly, one of the chief funders of Common Core is a man named Bill Gates. You probably heard of him, the Gates Foundation. And he's given now upwards of $250 million to get states to adopt Common Core and to get people to promote it and to implement Common Core across the country. He was recently interviewed by the Washington Post, and they asked him, well, is it possible that Microsoft has an interest in your promotion of Common Core? Because a memo was found, dated a year ago in April, in which Microsoft sent to school districts and to their own employees of Microsoft branches across the country, saying, well, you know, with this new Common Core testing, it's all computer testing. And so everyone will need the latest version of Windows, and new monitors, and new headphones, and new equipment. And the memo said, of course, nothing that is an Apple product will be compatible. And when the Washington Post asked, so Microsoft stands to make billions of dollars in taxpayer money because of all the technology that your schools will have to buy to implement the technology for Common Core, and Mr. Gates is partnering with the Pearson Company, which is a British company, to create the tests and the new instructional materials, many of them also computerized. And the Washington Post said, well, is it possible that you've given hundreds of millions to make billions of dollars? And Mr. Gates was so offended that he just couldn't see fit to answer the question. Interestingly, Mr. Gates' children go to a school that does not do Common Core. And when he was asked if it was going to work, he said, well, we'll have to do it for a decade before we can find out. So this man who is going to make billions of taxpayer dollars in the technology of Common Core, who sends his children to a school that does not do Common Core, who admits that Common Core is an experimental program, says it's okay for your children to be guinea pigs while he protects his children and makes tons of money off of you, the taxpayers. I got asked once to define Common Core, and I laughed and said, well, Common Core is a program in which our children are the guinea pigs and the taxpayers are the piggy banks. That is wrong. That is absolutely wrong. When we look at the system across the country, the saddest thing we find is how much this hurts our children. These standards, it's funny, you hear that they're rigorous, and then you hear that they're going to make our children college and career ready. It's a mantra. Rigorous college and career ready standards. What does college and career ready mean? I have 6 children. Just to give you an idea, I have an architect, a ballerina, a Navy nuke, an opera singer, and a computer engineer and a mechanical engineer. So if these standards are going to make just my family college and career ready through one single set of standards, they must simultaneously be able to make my 6 children able to design buildings, dance professionally, run a nuclear reactor, sing at an operatic level, program computers as an engineer, and design machines, all in the same set of standards. Do you know any set of standards that will do those things? Now multiply that times every child times every major. There is no such thing as one set of standards that will make our children college and career ready. It's a marketing slogan. Did you ever hear the commercials for We Are Farmers? And at the end of the commercial they go, "We are farmers," and everybody's mind is now going bump ba dum bump 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 bump. College and career ready is as meaningful as the syllables bump ba dum bump 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 bump. It sounds good, but it doesn't mean anything. So what does the Common Core standards, what do they prepare our children to do? Well, according to the folks who wrote them, it means that our children will be ready to go to a community college. It means Algebra 1 by the end of your sophomore year in high school, because the standards proponents say, community colleges begin with Algebra 1, so you don't need to have Algebra 2 in high school to go to college and start Algebra 1. It means that if you don't need it for the lowest level career, it's not necessary. It means no literature. Only the language that you need to do your job is called functional literacy, which is a lower standard. And are we seeing this happen? Yes, we are. This past summer, the National Association for Adult Literacy reported that the average reading level of our incoming college freshmen is 7th grade, which means the colleges have had to change their reading lists because the kids coming into college can no longer read Dickens or Chaucer or Steinbeck or Shakespeare. Instead, those reading lists now include titles that if you walk into a bookstore and go to that young adult section, that's the titles they're handing our college kids to read. That's not higher standards, that's lower standards. Common Core isn't about raising the achievement level of our children, it's about lowering the definition of success and then convincing you that the kids have made it. But they won't ever be ready to do the things that they've done before. Now, interestingly, in promoting Common Core, what you hear is, well, in these international tests, the children of the United States don't score in the highest rankings, they score at the bottom. What they don't tell you is that unlike countries like Singapore or Germany, we test all of our children, not just the cream of the crop. Whereas in some of these other places, they've sorted the children from the beginning. So they only test the ones who have already been sorted out to be at the top. We test them all. The other thing they don't tell you is that the United States scores in the top 2 or 3 in innovation, in problem solving, in the creation of engineers. We are the country that creates the people that create the technology that drives the world. But under Common Core, that will end. So what can you do about it? The very first thing you need to do is be educated. Find out what's going on. Here in Massachusetts, you guys had your own state standards and you threw them away to adopt the Common Core standards in exchange for a promise of $250 million in federal funds. Now, $250 million sounds like a lot of money, but when you put that besides the future of the children of Massachusetts, I don't think that measures up. Do you? No. But in fact, that's what Massachusetts did. It was never passed by your legislature. No legislature ever appropriated any money to develop these standards or to implement, to fund or allow for their development. This was handed to your legislatures as a fait accompli. Here in Massachusetts, your governor, by executive order, could stop these today. He could pull you out of the park test and he could pull you out of the Common Core. So it's time that you talk to your governor and tell him to step up to the plate, find his spine, and tell the federal government to go home and get their federal bureaucratic fingers off of our kindergarten kids. Now, your governor, when he ran in 2010, said, absolutely, I'm against Common Core. And then when he ran in 2014, he said, well, you know, maybe kind of, sort of, I don't really know, I'll have to think about it. And now it's 2015, and he's conspicuous by his silence. Because the federal government is pushing hard, and there's a lot of money at stake. On the other side is people like you and me. I get asked all the time, why are you involved in this? Well, first of all, I'm an FBI full-blooded Irish, and you know, there's no point being Irish if you can't be more stubborn than everybody that you've ever met. So there's no way that I'm going to back down. And second of all, I'm a grandma. I have this precious little 2-year-old and just found out we have one more on the way. Yay. Yeah, being a grandmother's the best thing on the planet. And I look at that little face and I think, I'm not handing her to the government. I travel the country doing this and teaching people and talking to people, and people say, well, are we going to win? And I am struck by how many women are leading this charge. Now, it's been said that fathers will die for their children, and God love you, gentlemen, that's true. Mothers will kill. And when the federal government decided to declare war on the children of America, they forgot that every one of those children has a mom and a grandmom attached, and there will never come a day when any of us are going to say, oh, okay, you can take my precious little one. That day is never going to happen. Our children do not belong to the government. They belong to us and to God. They are not creatures of the state. They are not part of a workforce development plan, cogs in a wheel. They are precious creations of an Almighty Father who had the right to determine their own destiny. And our schools were supposed to be about giving them an opportunity to reach their own potential, to find the person that they were created to be. Sadly, the proponents of Common Core in my own state of Pennsylvania came to defend it. And what they said was, well, you know, our schools are like McDonald's. When you buy a hamburger in a McDonald's in this city, and then you buy a hamburger in a McDonald's in that city, it's the same hamburger. So whether our children go to school in Massachusetts or Mississippi, they should come out the same. Does anybody think the hamburger is the client of McDonald's? When did our children move from being the clients of the educational system to becoming the products of the educational system? And if our children are the products, who's the client? Does anybody think what's done to the ground meat at McDonald's is done for the benefit of the ground meat? Of course not. You do something to a product for a client. Common Core isn't something they're doing to our children, or something they're doing for our children. It's something they're doing to them, for someone else. Not on my watch. Not on my watch. And hopefully not on yours either. So start by protecting your own children. Now you have the testing coming up this spring, the park test. Opt your children out. Do not let them use your children as guinea pigs. The park testing is done by a company called Pearson, and they're still in what is called their field testing, which means they're testing out the questions on your kids. They're not paying your children to do their research. Your children are their slave labor. And when the tests are constructed, the experimental questions come before the questions that count for your child's placement or promotion or graduation or teacher evaluation. So by the time your kids get to the questions that count for them, they're already tired. Because those companies used your children as slave labor to get what they wanted first. Well, the last time I looked, slavery had been outlawed quite a while ago in this country, and it's about time that we extend that protection to our own children. So opt your kids out of the test. Then talk to elected officials at every level. Get your school committees to say no, because whole districts are opting out of the test here in Massachusetts. Make sure your district is one of them. Talk to your state representatives. Talk to the governor. No matter what party you belong to, talk to their county committees, your county committee, and say, are you against Common Core? Because if the answer isn't an unequivocal, I'm against it, then you shouldn't be supporting them. And I will tell you that in Oklahoma, which is a very Republican state, they voted no. And in Washington, the state of Washington, which is an absolutely Democrat state, the entire Washington State Democratic Committee unanimously voted no as well. So there are people on both sides of the political aisle opposing this. This is not a partisan issue. This is an issue about the future of our children. In my career, I had the privilege of serving as an advisor in the Reagan administration. I was one of the advisors to his Commission on the Family. And President Reagan used to say that freedom isn't passed on in our bloodstream. It's ours to protect and ours to defend. And we have to teach it to our children. Because if we don't stand in defense of freedom, we may find ourselves someday being in a position of having to tell our children about a United States where men and women used to be free. I have no intention of ever being in that position. I beg you to join me. Stand up for your nation and your children and our future. Stop the child abuse that is known as Common Core. Thank you very much.